Öncelikle hoş geldiniz. Size
Hello and welcome. I come from the land where Hector and Achilles used to live in prehistoric times, and the land which is sacred for Turkey. It used to be the land of war, but now it's the land of peace. I greet you all with respect. I prepared my presentation in English because that is what I was told. Now my right and left hemispheres will try to communicate with each other, and we'll try to go through the slides slowly. Impulsivity might lead to a dysfunction in the prefrontal and subcortical systems. This is a multidimensional personality trait, and it potentially contributes to the development and maintenance of obesity, because it may cause uncontrolled and excessive food intake. Impulsivity is the possible predictor of relapse in obesity treatment, and it is considered as a predicting factor among patients who quit the treatments. Obese people are more impulsive than others, and impulsive features are especially found to be higher with those who have a binge eating disorder. Such impulsive features are more common there. Suicide, aggression, and anger are also associated with eating disorders. Impulsive people appear to have no control over their eating behavior, and they have an interest toward food with higher calories. Suicide attempts are very common in obesity and in other eating disorders. Aggression and anger are also among the major psychopathological features in patients with eating disorders. People who have eating disorders and higher impulsivity together have more severe eating disorder symptoms, and cluster B personality disorders are much more common among these people. There's decreased psychological and personality functioning in these individuals. They have problems with biochemical functioning. They're less effective in terms of their coping strategies, and their long-term prognosis as well as their adherence to therapy do not tend to be positive. These individuals with eating disorders also have high levels of self-directed hostility and explosive outbursts of anger. They have difficulty taking their anger under control. The etiology of impulsivity is multifaceted. Neurobiologically, for example, these individuals have a problem with serotonin functioning. There's a bridge between binge eating and impulsivity. There are some genetic features in place as well. In these individuals' families, we see a higher rate of substance abuse disorder or criminality. And this suggests that this population has possibly a higher genetic disposition to impulsivity. They have a higher number of environmental risk factors as well. For example, they have a high rate of childhood abuse. They have a dysfunctioning family most of the time. And they grew up in environments which lack warmth and stability. Childhood abuse has a huge role to play here, especially the psychiatric history of the mother has a very important role to play here. Childhood abuse was found to be predictive of impulsive behaviors in that early traumatic experiences may lead to the development of affective dysregulation and inadequate control of impulsive behaviors. As I said before, maternal psychiatric history, the presence of a maternal psychiatric history seems to play a role in eating disorders, and problems in the lack of an adult role model lead to personality formation problems. Impulsivity in anorexia nervosa. In restricting anorexia, individuals have behavioral impulsivity most of the time. Self-control is slightly better in these individuals. A significant majority of these individuals are involved in behavior that would lead to self-injury, parasuicidal behavior, substance abuse, and kleptomania. Well, this is not a pornographic picture. I just wanted you to see the self-perception of this individual on the mirror. In binge eating and purging behavior, these types of behavior are very common, especially in anorexia nervosa, according to some authors. This is specifically in form of purging, but not in binge eating. Purging is predictive of impulsive behavior, some researchers say, but both binge eating and purging were associated with alcohol abuse, dependence, and drug abuse or dependence, especially in women with anorexia nervosa. Let's have a look at some of the subtypes of anorexia nervosa. One of them is binge eating and purging, and the other one is the restricting type, especially in ANBP. There's a higher number of impulsive behavior in comparison with the restricting type, and novelty-seeking dimension is more common in these individuals. Individuals with ANBP are involved in more high-risk types of behavior, and they're involved in drug abuse, diet pill abuse, and stealing behavior as well. Both in anorexia nervosa and bulimia nervosa, and there's a tendency towards self-injury, stealing, sexual promiscuity, substance abuse, and substance abuse is significantly linked to binge eating and purging behavior. Let's now have a look at impulsivity and bulimic behaviors. Some of these individuals have more attentiveness problems and a higher rate of impulsivity as well, especially in the BN type. Impulsivity seems to play an even more negative role, and this negative impact on impulsivity has a negative impact on the course and the outcome of the disease. There might be problems in serotonin and dopamine genes of bulimia nervosa, there's decreased activity at the 5-HT2A receptors, and the serotonin carriers or transporters seem to have problems as well. These are some of the genetic risk factors. Dopaminergic genes have also been associated with novelty seeking and impulsive personality traits. It is also believed that dopaminergic genes may interact with impulsivity levels to increase the risk for binge eating and other bulimia nervosa related types of behavior. Similarly, bulimia nervosa, in 40% of the patients with bulimia nervosa, we see impulse control problems in areas other than eating as well, such as difficulties in managing negative emotions and sensation seeking, and attention seeking as well. Let me say a couple of words about multi-impulsive bulimia nervosa as well, because this is one of the concepts in bulimia nervosa. This is not only an eating disorder, but it's also in the form of substance abuse, self-injury, sexual disinhibition, and stealing. And these individuals, of course, have a negative prognosis, as would be expected. Evidence from some studies point to an increased rate of impulsivity in obese people. ADHD prevalence has been reported as high in these individuals as well. In binge eating disorder, reward systems also play a very important role. These individuals perceive food items as highly rewarding, and they have intense food cravings. So they spontaneously start eating, and they're completely disinhibited in the control of this behavior. Experimental studies show that a reward sensitivity of these individuals is very high, and especially in binge eating, when compared with normal weight subjects, obese subjects are more reward oriented, and there is more increased activity in parts of the brain which are reward related in obese individuals. And there are also some comorbidities between ADHD and bulimia nervosa. Well, bulimia, for example, has quite a high rate, an elevated rate in childhood ADHD patients. It's seen at the rate of 23.5%, and among adults, ADHD-BN comorbidity is seen at the rate of 9%. Some studies found an association between childhood impulsivity and the development of bulimia nervosa. As Ozan explained in his own presentation, there's also a relationship between OCD and impulsive behavior, and of course there's a relationship between OCD and eating disorders as well. Especially the more impulsive types of OCD usually show a comorbidity with eating disorders. And some authors also claim that there is a link between affect regulatory behavior and binge purge behavior, as well as OCD-related compulsions. In these individuals, cognitive inhibitions, and especially internal cognitions, intrusive thoughts, and mental rituals are very common. Behavioral inhibition is also common among these individuals. Similar to OCD, these individuals show deficits in behavioral and cognitive inhibition. Impulse control disorders and eating disorders are comorbid most of the time, and this of course has a negative impact on the final outcome of the therapy. Let me say a couple of words about M-opioid receptor antagonists, especially GCK 1521498, which is an opioid receptor antagonist. This has an effect to reduce motivation as well as a hedonic impact, especially towards highly preferred food. And this, of course, reduces, in return, the rate of ingestion. There are some drugs that inhibit the M-opioid receptors. And these are reported to be effective across a range of disorders characterized by compulsive consumption of food and other items. GSK is currently in clinical development for the treatment of compulsive eating disorders and obesity. This is true especially for high fat and sugar items. It is believed to create a reducing response against these items. And it is believed that this will reduce the tendency of some desired food items, such as desserts, for example. So this will serve as a treatment for binge eating. Some imaging studies were conducted with naltrexone, and it was found that the comparator responded better than naltrexone, especially when it comes to food-related stimuli of amygdala and ventral striatum. In amygdala and at the ventral striatum, activation was reduced. There are some other studies conducted with M-opioid receptors in pallidum and nucleus accumbens. Some hotspots were identified in these two areas, and this is a sign of activation which can increase hedonic reactions to sweet tastes. There are some new studies on the psychotherapy of impulsive behavior. It is believed that dialectical behavioral therapy can be useful against impulsive disorders. DBT mainly focuses on problem-solving skills and emotional regulation strategies, as well as interpersonal skills and distress tolerance. And it is believed that DBT can help these people achieve emotional stability in stressful conditions. There are also some studies conducted with psychostimulants in patients or individuals with ADHD and BN. Psychostimulants can be used as pharmacological agents that target the same objectives. In one of the studies, there were 6 participants with bulimia nervosa, and this study showed that none of the women discontinued the medication due to any side effect. And it was also found that due to appetite-suppressing effects of stimulant medication, the results may prove to be positive. But it is contraindicated for anorexia nervosa. It is only indicated for bulimia nervosa. So what are the takeaway messages from this presentation? Aggression, suicidal attempts, and anger are very common among psychopathological features in patients with eating disorders. The etiology of impulsivity in eating disorders is multifaceted, and from the perspective of impulse control, some comorbid disorders are seen with eating disorders. Opioid receptor antagonists may be helpful in the future. Thank you very much.